He was in terrible shape with the medical malpractice situation. And starting with Governor Wise and moving on through Governor Manchin, they worked really hard. The legislature, probably one of the best things they ever did was get that medical malpractice situation under control. Our doctors were leaving. They were getting sued all over the place. It was horrible. Finally got that under control. I will tell you that depending on the makeup of the West Virginia legislature now and in the next couple of years, that is under attack. Could be under attack, and we could that could be undone. The same thing with the workers' compensation. And you're talking about people suing because they're not, you know, they hire lawyers and they sue because they can't get enough money for their injuries on the job. We are in the possibility of having all that good work undone because we have the wrong people up there in the legislature.
But it takes a jury to vote against it, give them the money.
It takes a jury, that's correct.
That's the West Virginia people voting to give them their money.
And
another thing I want to straighten you out on is that government does not create industry, never will be able to create industry. The best thing government can do is completely stay out of industry and quit screwing it up for everybody. Stop the redistribution of wealth. Number one, the one thing you want to do is stop the welfare system. It's destroying our country. It's destroying our state. People are laying around collecting money right and left, have better cars than I do. I've worked every day of my life. That's the things you need to go up there and stop. You need to stop it completely. You need to call them people and say, you need to get a job or a friend tomorrow. It's over. Now that's the way it ought to be. No hymns or buts about it. And you know, you can fix tax, you can fix this, but that's the biggest cost we got. I think it was a couple of years ago that West Virginia spent $65,000 on welfare for Viagra. You know, it's out of control. These people are living in brick homes. I don't live in a brick home, I live in a dump. I live in the hood. They're up here in government housing being subsidized with better cars than I have, living with a DuPont worker. They've got it all. They got a card when they go to the Kroger. I got to pay for it. And my stuff, my food, is junk food. I'm talking about junky steaks. It ain't sirloin like they get to buy. That's where you got to stop it. You got to force these people that never work, and they're never going to work because their dad didn't, and their dad didn't. That's where you got to stop it.
You're also going to pay for their health insurance.
I don't want to pay for any of it. I say it's either you support yourself or you die.
You know, I remember my family, my uncle told me a story about living on a farm in Putnam County during the Depression.
That's the way I feel, sorry.
And my mom and uncle, they grew up on a farm in Putnam County during the Depression. And my uncle told me a story that when he was a kid, a man came to the farm and went to my great-grandfather and asked permission to work, wanted to cut brush. My great-grandfather said, we didn't need to cut brush. It doesn't need cut. He said, well, I want to hoe the corn. And my great-grandfather said, the corn doesn't need hoed. He said, well, I want to go and, you know, I'll do this, or I'll clean out the barn, or I'll do this. And my great-grandfather kept saying, we don't need it, we don't need it, we don't need it. And my uncle said he saw the man dropped his head and he started crying. And my great-grandfather looked at him and said, what's wrong? He said, my kids haven't eaten in a week. So they found him something to do, and he went out and he worked, and then at the end of the day, they gave him some bacon and cornmeal, and they went home. So you know, it's interesting on how the world has changed. In 1925, during the Depression, we had people in this country that starved. And because of an economic, you know, but you know what? They didn't come, they didn't beg, they didn't steal, and they didn't threaten to take anything.
Actually, in the 20s, in the 20s, they dropped taxes, they lowered taxes, they stopped government spending, and we had the roaring 20s. That was Calvin Coolidge. After that, they started all the entitlements in the 30s. Then what happened? Does it remind you of anything going on?
You do have a valid point, because if we end up providing subsidies, you know, it does create a culture of people that doesn't work. And one of the main issues we dealt with recently was the extension of unemployment benefits. And that was a tough decision in Washington, because on one hand, we had people that if they didn't have the benefits, they weren't going to be able to to buy groceries and to make it, and then on
But
the
they
other
were
hand,
jobs.
you had the argument that extending the benefits is an incentive for them not to go look for work.
That's right.
And these are tough decisions, tough love decisions that people have to make. We need, you know, I think a conservative approach. We need in West Virginia to change, to turn the corner, and to provide incentives for people to want to work and to find them the jobs that they need. And if it means making
They have to find the job, so that's what I'm trying to correct
Right.
you. You keep
Right.
on putting it on government. Government
No,
cannot do it.
I agree with you, but the
Your
reason
decision-
government is
that's
getting
right.
in the way of creating the jobs. We
Your
need-
decision creates your environment. Your environment does not make your
You're
decision.
exactly right. Government needs to get out of it and let the
That's
jobs-
exactly right. Government needs to mind their own business.
Government gave the jobs away, because when they dropped the tariffs and stuff, the companies moved out to China and Mexico.
Anybody else have anything?
What I meant was, if a person is injured, I believe they should be made whole as far as medical and power for pain and suffering. But when somebody stupidly spills coffee in their lap and gets $300 million, I think there should be a cap somewhere.
You know, one thing I've learned over the years, two things. Number one, government by its nature is inefficient. The smaller it is, the better off we are. Number one. Number two, I've learned never underestimate the power of greed. And I've seen this debate about tort reform. The plaintiffs' lawyers want to make millions. And if they had their way, they'd be making millions and millions, and they have made millions and millions and millions. The insurance companies, if they had their way, they would collect premiums and never pay out anything. And they're on the other side of it. The business lawyers, the big law firms, you know, that represent the businesses, the insurance companies, they like litigation because that's how they make their living.
Absolutely.
Right? So, and then all of these people contribute money to judicial campaigns, and the conservatives want conservative judges, and and they throw, the plaintiff's lawyers throw more money into it. So, as a government leader, never underestimate the power of greed, and you have to be a balancing force to do what's best for society, and usually what's going to happen is you're going to make everybody mad.
Yeah, and this is a good place, you can do something about that by watching who you vote for on the Supreme Court, the West Virginia Supreme
Right.
Court, because that's the court of last appeals, and they are the ones that, okay, when those multi-million-dollar judgments get appealed, that's where the buck stops.
That's right.
And a couple years ago, when we had some of those guys sitting on there, I mean, it was just wide open, fair game, everything got okay. That's when all those multi-million-dollar cases took place. So you can do something about it.
But you've got to be business friendly if you want business to come.
That's exactly right.
Yes, sir.
Actually, the attorneys that I think ought to be stopped are the ones that are strangling our economy, the Environmental Defense Club, I should call them club, the Sarah Club, all these advocacy groups that file thousands and thousands of lawsuits every year to strangle our economy. They're the ones who got to stop. I think they are a bigger problem than the tort